Hello and welcome to a conversation with the Idaho Leaders United board. This is Tommy Ahlquist, and I am very pleased to be joined today by two of our esteemed board members, Odette Bolano, the CEO and president of St. Alphonsus Health System, and the former Ada County Sheriff, Gary Raney, who is now consulting all over the world in the United States. And it's nice to see you back in Idaho.
Yes, it is.
It's probably nice to be back in Idaho.
It is, absolutely.
We're excited to record this today. There's certainly a lot of events going on, and this is a subject that is sometimes uncomfortable to discuss with many. And I think the reason we started Idaho Leaders United was to try to give strength and a voice to the silent majority that is kind of tired of some of the things that are going on in this great state. And so today we wanted to record a podcast that could be shared in different ways and share some of the thoughts and things that are going out there, again, to get awareness. And I really appreciate both of you for being here and look forward to a conversation. Want to get started by some of the current events that are going on, and most of all, maybe in general, talk about just extremism in Idaho. Unfortunately, we have a history where we're kind of known for that. I think for a long time, if you said the word Idaho, that's something that came up. And I think the community and the state did a great job of kind of squashing that, and then it's really come back, unfortunately. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, why a group like us is needed in this state right now. Odette, why don't you start?
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. Great to be here with you. So I think, like you said, there's a silent majority that loves this state, that really exemplifies who we are, a kind community, looking out for our neighbor, wanting to have hardworking people come and join our state. And I think that it is important to have leaders that share good information, not misinformation or disinformation, to let people know out there, we're a growing state. We need people to come to Idaho. And a lot of people are scared to come to Idaho. They don't know what to expect. They only see the headlines. They know the history of the state. And so the better that we are in getting people who really know the fiber of what Idaho is and what we stand for, we will be a greater state for them.
I love that. Gary?
You know, I'm a lifelong Idahoan, and what Odette said is so true, that the vast majority of Idahoans, for as long as I have known, and even today, really good people who are caring and just do the right thing. You know, it's that old joke about in Idaho we wave with all fingers and things like that. But at the same time, like you alluded to, Tommy, you know, we also have this dark history behind us. I remember not that long ago, probably 30 years, when the Aryan Nations compound was in northern Idaho, and we would travel and rather than being recognized for potatoes, we'd be recognized for, oh, that's where the Aryan Nations are. And we got this reputation nationally about being white supremacists. And I said, no, there's a small compound up in northern Idaho that represents that, but the rest of Idaho doesn't represent that. And that's what's so important. And so when the Aryan Nations folded and that compound went away, it was such a relief. And then people started saying, oh, Idaho, it's potatoes again. And yes, now I welcome that. But you know, in the last few years, this dark history has come back. Idaho has that independent, sort of out frontier mentality, lots of, you know, Second Amendment rights and all of that. And I think it's because of that independence, then it draws people here who want to do well, and it draws people here who don't want to do well. We have people like Ammon Bundy who come and was never invited here, and I'm glad he's gone. But those sorts of things, when you have the Aryan Nations, when you have an Ammon Bundy, when you have more of these people, it makes our state look like it's representing extremism.
I love that, and I think sometimes when we talk about this, it turns negative quickly, and I love keeping it positive, because if you think about who we are as Idahoans and our heritage and our values of, it's neighborly. I mean, I don't know of a better people that understand work, understand the value of work, and really just love this place. And then the outright hypocrisy of those that are doing these things that are detrimental, it doesn't make any sense. It's not neighborly. It's exactly opposite of what we want. But they're the ones claiming that we don't want to change, right? So let's talk a little bit about traditional values and how the reason this group is trying to empower, we're trying to remind everyone and our neighbors, and that we don't have to stand for this, that we don't want those changes. It's not who we are. And yet they spin that on itself. And that's probably the thing that frustrates me the most. They're pretty effective sometimes at spinning the narrative.
Yeah. So, social media has changed so many things, right? And I've done a lot of research. I'm on the American Board of Internal Medicine Foundation, and our focus is to really focus on trust and addressing misinformation in healthcare. And part of our research has told us that people who are focused in providing misinformation usually have had something in their life that somewhat isolates them, pulls them to a group that creates that divide, that provides that rhetoric on and on where it's believable, right? So I think that one of the things that really resonated with me about Leaders United, Idaho Leaders United, was we need to have that voice out in the community that will ensure that people are getting the right information. I tell this story. When I first moved here 9 years ago, and my children, who are adult children, came to visit me, and they said, wow, Idaho is such a great state. Like, people are so friendly. Mom, you've moved to a wonderful place. 4 years later, they're calling me and saying, where are you living today? Because the small minority of the rhetoric that is really negative was what was out there on the national news, right? So I think that it's just so important that we address misinformation, how social media is affecting many things in a negative way. So there's some great things about social media. Also, I think that being a rural state and not having the density of population really allows for more and more distorted information to get out.
I agree. And then maybe when you comment, also the hypocrisy, it's law and order, right? They're anti-law and order. They're anti these values of Idahoans, which is we respect our military, we respect our law enforcement, and it's anything but that if you look at what Bundy has done. Speak a little bit to that hypocrisy.
Yeah, Tommy used the exact word that starts all of it, and that is respect. And so Idahoans respect each other. We may have differing opinions, but we welcome those. I ran as a Republican. You ran as a Republican. Those politics have changed so much today because it's often become disrespectful by this small group of people who can use fear and intimidation to drive people away and to make the silent majority even more silent. And I hope Idaho Leaders United helps give a voice to that silent majority and gives people an opportunity to stand up, say things, and speak. But for law enforcement, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of manipulation of the laws and of the sense of safety and things that the extremists can do to both put fear in people and embolden people, because if I wear around symbols of violence, or I carry my gun downtown, or I go to a rally in Coeur d'Alene, that shows how powerful I am, when in fact it's not. That's not the sort of thing that we want in Idaho.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit how it's affecting business. Odette, you probably are an authority on this. You recruit physicians, mid-levels, practitioners of all types from all around the country. You have to, right? There's a shortage of that in Idaho. Yeah. How has this made it difficult for you?
It's made it very difficult. I try to spend some time with a lot of our recruits, our physician recruits. And the reason I do that is, first of all, I want to talk about how great Idaho is. But there is not one candidate that doesn't ask me about, hey, what I've heard on the news, read, about Idaho, is it true? Will my family be safe? Will I really be able to live the values that you talk about, right? Our core values of integrity, justice, stewardship, reverence, dignity for every person. You speak about that, but is this a state where that can happen? And I have to tell you, many times people tell us we decided to go somewhere else because we're not sure whether or not we would be safe and we would be able to live the way that we want to live in Idaho. So it is affecting the workforce. I'm also the outgoing chair of the Boise Chamber, and we talk about it there. Businesses are coming to the table at our board meetings saying we're having a really difficult time recruiting. So it's not just healthcare, it is other businesses that feel there's this negative vibe out there of these very small groups of people that have gotten national sensational type coverage that are making it very difficult for everybody to recruit the type of people that we want here, right? People like us that are representative of the majority of people who live in Idaho.
That's right.
It's my hope that that the pendulum's about to swing. A pendulum has to go all the way left or all the way right before it swings back to the center. And I think with things that are happening now, everything from what's happening in our state politics and the control of the central committees and the districts, what's happening with legislatures and the scorecards, and what's happening locally, that most Idahoans are ready to now just say, that's enough. We're going to step up. We're going to do something. We're going to quit tolerating this rhetoric. We're going to quit tolerating this intimidation. There are so many things that are going on that if we band together just that little bit to say this is no longer acceptable. There was this noise that's been going on for the last few years, but we're tired of that noise because it's hurting us. It's hurting our businesses, but it's hurting our kids. It's hurting our education systems. Look at what's happening in Bonner County. We've got to stop allowing this to happen, and I hope that pendulum's about to swing back and correct itself.
I love that. One of the things that I've always found, even if I disagree with someone on policy, if you can start having really good discussions about policy, you're not that far apart. In fact, most of the time you start talking about the things you really believe in, and you talk about people and their lives and how we as Americans want to take care of each other, and you get closer and closer together when you talk policy. And it's just people that don't really care about policy. In fact, they very rarely bring up policy. It's rhetoric to divide people, and they prey on fear and things that make us different. And those conversations really aren't about solutions. It's terribly frustrating for lots of people that are trying to make things better, whether you're a CEO of a hospital, you're in law enforcement, or you're in business, trying to take care of families and create industry and create a community where people can feel included and can feel part of something. It's just so anti that. The fear is something. Let's talk a little bit about that, because we're not talking about people disagreeing. People will always disagree. We could sit and talk about policies today that we would not align on policy, but we do it in a respectful way. We do it in a way that's productive, and a way we find commonalities and we can work together. That seems to be something of the past now. This is true extremism and fear and intimidation. So let's talk a little bit about things that have happened in Idaho and why a group like ours has started to try to give a voice to that silent majority.
Yeah, so let's talk about a great partner in our community, St. Luke's, when Alan Bundy went to the hospital claiming medical kidnapping, which was actually the first time I ever heard that term, and really took over their campus. They put healthcare workers at risk. They put other patients at risk. They totally gridlocked what could happen at that facility. And the rest of us were watching, stood up our incident command centers, distracted us from taking care of patients, made us think about, gosh, do we now need to be able to now have some kind of plan to deal with people showing up armed on our campuses, when if you think about healthcare workers, they're servants taking care of people at their most vulnerable time. And now they have to worry whether or not they're going to be safe. And quite frankly, this is across our entire country. But when you're in a state where you have a small majority increasing the fear, and workplace violence in healthcare has been increasing at incredible numbers. But when you're in a place where there's even more fear, it really creates a vulnerability for our colleagues that creates distraction from them being able to do what they do well, creates distraction from administration to understand the things that we should be focusing, quality, excellence, compassion, all those things. we're focused on, we have to be ready for somebody possibly coming and trying to take over our campus while we're trying to take care of 400 patients that are in and outside of our door, and we always used to think that hospitals and clinics were these sacred places like churches. Well, no more, right? Yeah. So I think that was really an alarming situation that none of us had ever experienced.
Yeah, for me, though, it really hit home because that was my old ER, right? I worked there for 18 years and saw over 45,000 patients. And you said it well. I mean, it is a sacred privilege. I mean, I've not in medicine now, I'm in business. And the one thing I miss is you sit there and every door you open and every room you walk in, you're meeting someone at a vulnerable point where they are there for help and care. And you get a chance to, one, find out why they're there. And sometimes it's not what's on the chief complaint, by the way. It's ask the right questions and try to figure out, how do I help you? And and to think that in that environment that's already stressful and taxing, where you're in one room with someone that's there for one emergency and you may have a cardiac arrest in the next room. And it's just always, and now for my colleagues and friends, having to deal with what was going on outside those doors with reckless disregard. If you think what kind of a person you have to be to disrupt care in an emergency room, in a community emergency room, you are distracted from reality, because that is just cruel. And then to understand the systems, right? Here you have a trauma system that is ready and willing to run towards the fire and save, and you've got all these things you're trying to keep people alive. Literally, it's not an exaggeration. You're saving people's life, keeping them alive. Those ICUs are minute to minute making adjustments to keep people alive, and now you got some knuckleheads that are claiming rights were violated while they are violating the rights of hundreds of people and family. It's got to be probably one of the best examples of the hypocrisy that exists in this element of our population, because they don't even understand what rights they're violating. Very aggravating.
But also, as I said, the pendulum is swinging, because thanks to St. Luke's for stepping up, because that was not easy with the threats, and stepping up and bringing through our system of government justice. And that justice put Ammon Bundy where he should be, which is not in the state of Idaho. And they will never make up for what they lost. I mean, Ammon Bundy will never be able to compensate for that. But, that was an instance where the pendulum started to swing back. Up in northern Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, there was law enforcement vastly working together to identify the extremists who were going to come in and violently disrupt the rally. But by working with the political leaders and law enforcement working together, the pendulum started to swing back. And you don't go to Coeur d'Alene to interrupt a rally now. We're seeing more and more instances now where that cooperation and communication is really coming together and making a difference, because that's what it's about. Whether you're in law enforcement or whether you're a leader, it's getting with people who want to do the right thing for the state of Idaho and having those lines of communication, the relationships day to day, but to know when something's going to happen. Those lines of communication create a strategy that can help us push that pendulum back and keep those people out of here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's move on a little bit. So Idaho Leaders United was a community need, a group of community, really law enforcement, ranchers, farmers, military, businesses, a very diverse and broad-based group of folks that just said, hey, this is not our heritage. This is not Idaho. We're going to come together and do what we can to provide a voice for, again, the silent majority. I think it's been very effective in our first year trying to provide that voice. And, we have a pledge out there. Let's talk a little bit more about the organization, how people might follow along, join, or help. Let's talk a little bit about what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So for me, it has been a way to, most people want to live their life quietly and engage in the things that make them happy, make them feel like their lives are worth living. And when you have these people disrupting over here, making a lot of noise, right? You need the people that are trying to live their own lives to step up and say, this is what Idaho's all about, reminding us all every single day why we're here, why we want the communities of hardworking, committed, friendly, neighborly people living their lives in Idaho, speaking up against that small majority that is getting all that attention. So those of us who are just living our lives, doing the right thing in our communities, have to have a voice. And I think that we came together to have a voice, to get others to join us, right? That population of the majority coming together saying, no more. We're going to set the record straight. We're going to call out those people who feel that they can disrupt our lifestyles. We're going to make sure that we give the information on who they are and rally the millions of people that are not in that group to come together and help us push forward. And I think it needed some bold leaders to stand up first. I have people stop me and say, how do I join? What do I need to do? What does it mean to be there? And we're like, we want people to be able to have a voice, to understand the values that we stand for, and come together so we can have the masses really dictate versus the small numbers getting all the attention around what Idaho isn't.
Fantastic.
Yeah, when we started, I'd call people up, and you never know how these efforts are going to go, but we're thinking about doing this, and say, what do you think about it? And just everybody I called was like, this is great. This is what we need. What can I do to help? And we're just all in. And even had people like my neighbor walk down the street, knock on my door, and said, I heard about what you're doing, and what can I do to help? Can I write you a check or what? And every one of those, when people say, what can I do to help? Because it was during election year, I said, you and your neighbors need to go vote. That's what needs to happen. Let's start there, because we've got to take the power back and put it with the people where it belongs, not with these little centralized committees that are trying to grab power now. And then you've got the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which is, I don't want to spend too much time there because they don't deserve it. But what they're doing really to our politics in Idaho is destructive. I mean, there's no other word for it, is destructive. Senator Winder's been pretty vocal against him, and now they're targeting him. As they will target others. And again, that pushback of getting the silent majority who don't know exactly what to do, just do something.
Yeah. I don't want to dwell on them, and again, but I do think they have a new employee that is a known extremist, right? Very well documented.
Yes.
And so I don't think it's going away. I think there's going to need to be constant vigilance, constant positive pressure from our business community, from law enforcement, our every aspect of our communities, where we can band together and disavow and call out. So any thoughts before we leave that topic on their recent hire?
They have been master manipulators of public opinion. That's what they do. I remember their executive director when he was a newspaper reporter, and he wasn't any better then. But yeah, they have been successful in doing what they want to do, but what they want to do is divide Idaho. They want our politicians and the people who are they influenced by to follow what they think is right. So you said a little bit ago, sit down with anybody and talk about policy. They're another example of not wanting to do that. Their policy is their policy, and there is no negotiation. There is no statesmanship. There is none of that political process that our country was founded on. And so again, I hope that we will see this pendulum swing. People need to support the right candidate, not the candidate that just gets the right scorecard in the State House. The legislature always has a number of people that are a little different. That's a nice way to put it, but some of those people have more power than they used to have.
Yeah. Anything else on that before we move on? Yeah.
Well said.
The only other thing I'll say is it's interesting. If you don't want to talk about policy in a constructive way, you really want anarchy. And that's kind of what they want, whether it be laws, law enforcement, whether it be military. They don't like any of that. They want anarchy. And that is not what this country was built on. This country was, for us, the country was built on a constitution, and you read that, And that's what this is about. And I the way they manipulate that and wrap themselves in the flag of our country and claim that that Constitution gives them the right to tear down other people's rights, it's just wrong. And I think that's what fires up and inspires us to try to do more. What's next for our organization this year, and how can people help that are out there?
Wow. Well, I think, it's an election year. And so I think we have a lot of work to do to really educate the public, the silent majority, to what you said, Gary, get out and vote. We need to do our work, let people know what we know based on the research that we're doing, and give information for people to make good choices. I think that's first and foremost for us in 2024.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Odette said. Inform voters who care, who will get out and get to the polls. And of course, we're not going to have a primary election in the Republican Party, so that hampers it. But it's really, if you focus on the state, most people don't know who their state representatives are, who their state senators are. Inform yourself, know who's really the right person, and get out there and vote. And that makes a world of difference. And other than that, I think it's also support your neighbors, have the conversations. If something is happening to somebody with the intimidation, it's almost like, well, you're an elected official now, so it's okay that they're going to go camp outside your house. That's not okay. That's not okay. And the way that we do away with that,
it was never okay, right?
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was it ever okay to have, to have people outside and intimidate children?
No.
And how far this has slipped it's not Idaho.
Exactly.
The other thing we'll mention is IdahoLeadersUnited.org, and then we have social media channels where we try to get information out to combat some of the disinformation that may be out there. And then we have a pledge, a pretty simple pledge. We would like businesses and individuals to join us in that pledge and being part of our efforts. Any closing thoughts or words here?
No, it's been exciting to see what's happened. It's the great thing about Idaho Leaders United is you have this diverse group of people. I mean, from business and your development past and your medical past, the hospitals, but especially Odette, and she's been a tremendous leader here. My contacts with government and the military and law enforcement, it's spread the word and help people stand up and say, no more. I don't want to see this. This isn't Idaho.
Love it.
Yeah, I think this is an amazing state. And to have people just tear it down, have a national image that none of us would ever want, is something that fires me up, right? To get people excited about being positive, about talking about the great things that we do and getting the momentum that we need from individuals, from corporations, from partners in the community that want Idaho to be the great state it is.
Amen. I'm not going to say anything else. That was great.
Either. That was great.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Odette
My
and
pleasure.
Gary. Thank you for your leadership and all you do for our community.
Absolutely.
And until next time, this was the Idaho Leaders United, maybe podcast. We'll see you, Odette.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy.